Hi everybody, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100. My name is Scott, also known as Cineram. I do the Thursday videos here on this channel, and it is a gloriously warm and beautifully sunny day here in Chicago, so I'm out on my back deck again for a review which I haven't done since last year. Now, this week is Angelina Jolie week, and she's incredibly famous, of course, and she's made good movies once in a while. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of variation on our channel for this theme because we're all doing action movies. We had reviews of Wanted and the two Tomb Raider movies, and now I'm doing Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But there's a very good reason why I'm doing this movie, and that is because I feel it's Angelina Jolie's best movie. And not only that, but it's also the best movie from director Doug Liman, who also did Go, the ensemble comedy Go, and the Bourne Identity, the first one. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, from the first time I saw it, I've always felt that Mr. and Mrs. Smith was the great American John Woo movie that John Woo didn't actually make. When he came to the United States, he made, you know, some very popular movies like Broken Arrow, Face Off, Mission Impossible 2, and what have you, with varying degrees of critical and commercial success. But he never really made a movie quite like the kind that he made in Hong Kong before he came here. And I'm thinking of two movies in particular. That would be The Killer and A Hard Boiled, both starring Chow Yun-fat. Now, in both those movies, you have a gangster or assassin or some criminal type guy who's being hunted by a cop throughout the movie. But at some point during the movie, the two guys realize that they have a common enemy, and they fight together against him. And it usually ends up with them in some isolated area where hordes of guys with guns and assault rifles and rocket launchers descend upon them, and they stand back to back, and they blast their way through, you know, wave after wave of guys coming after them. And that's what happens at the end of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Or throughout the movie, basically, you have this married couple who have been living under, you know, false pretenses, false names, Jane and John Jones, basically, or Jane and John Smith, sorry. They're playing at being the perfect suburban couple, despite the fact that neither of them knows exactly what the other one does for a living, you know. Not a lot of communication, I guess. A lot of conversations, I guess, seem to get glossed over in this household. But as it turns out, they are both contractors for hits. Angelina Jolie runs a firm of entirely all women assassins and support tech, whereas Brad Pitt's character, he has a little office with his best pal Vince Vaugn, who finds jobs for them. And they both perform hits. But at a certain point, they get set on each other. They realize that they're competing firms, and they're set on killing each other. So they try this for a while, but eventually they say, you know, look, we really need to take out the people that set us against each other instead. So then you have the big climax in the Home Depot-like or big sort of department store, in which all these guys in black SWAT gear and assault rifles invade, you know, the store, and the two of them, they've got, you know, their pistols and their rifles, and they're just, you know, running around shooting at these guys and trying to take out as many as possible before they get taken out. It's a really, really cool sequence. And the other really good thing that's great about this movie is the tone. You can't take this movie literally for a second. I mean, the cops, they don't do anything, okay? They show up at one point at their house after they've been shooting and blowing each other up, you know, all night long, and they don't do anything. They just say, no, we're fine, and the cops leave. It's ridiculous. You can't take it literally for a second. But what's great about the tone of this movie is that they don't play it too seriously, and they don't play it too humorously. They play it just light enough to, you know, you feel there's possible consequences involving them getting hurt, but you never really feel like they're in serious danger. It's semi-comical, and it just works great. It works great. And I also think it was probably benefit the movie that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie did not become a real couple until after this movie was shot, because that might have spoiled the chemistry a little bit. But yeah, really good photography, you know, the whole thing, you know, there's a really good cast of people in there. Michelle Monaghan is in like a small role. And this movie went through a number of permutations as they were editing it. They had basically their bosses playing major roles. At one point they were played by, I think, by Terrence Stamp and Angie Dickinson, and then they scrapped that scene and then they hired David Keith and Angela Bassett to play the two head bosses for each of their main characters. But they ended up just leaving all that alone and going, you know what, we're just sticking with the Smiths here and them fighting each other and then fighting all the guys in black, and it worked great. It works really great. Now there's two different versions of this movie on disc. One of them is the theatrical release and one of them is an unrated cut with changes. Now some of these changes are additions, little extra bits of scenes, and some of them are actually subtractions. And the thing that really peeved me when I saw the unrated version is that there's this recurring piece of music that begins in the flashback when they first meet, basically. It's like South America or something like that, and there's this this really great acoustic guitar piece that plays a few times, and it plays again during the climax, except in the unrated version, that piece of music is missing from the end. And that doesn't make any sense to me because it works so great. You see them dancing around each other in slow motion, shooting this way, shooting that way, dodging gunfire, dodging rockets while this music plays. It's just amazing. It's a great scene. And they cut the music from the unrated version. So I would say forget the unrated version and stick with the regular, theatrical PG-13 version. Anyway, that's my review of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm sure most of you have already seen it already, but hey, it's the one that I gotta recommend because I admire it so much. Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll have a new theme, of course, on Friday. And for those of you who are going to see the Avengers this weekend, I hope you enjoy it. I know I'm going to. See you then.